Welcome to the Flexible Curricula channel, your one-stop for anything education with your host, Nate Berman. Though we normally consult for schools and districts, we also strive to help parents who really want to be in the know for their kids' education. If you like what you see, please give us a thumbs up, share, and leave a comment. If you want to see more of our videos, hit that subscribe button. Today's video gives you a look at why it's so hard for administrators to properly evaluate teachers. Now, just like any profession, evaluations can play an important role in improving an organization. Schools are no different. But why do administrators in schools have such a hard time evaluating teachers? So that's our goal for today. So the first question is, who becomes an administrator? Now, normally there's two main types of teachers that become administrators. The first type are those that happen to be mediocre teachers, and they push themselves to move up into administration ranks. The second type is that of great teachers who are normally promoted by administration without themselves having that personal ambition to move into administration. Now, why is this the case that you're dealing with two different types? Now, there are some in both types that may be very successful, and there are some in both types that won't. But what is the main issue that we have to understand is that the skill set needed to be a teacher is not the exact same skill set needed to be a great administrator. And this is where it becomes more complicated for teacher evaluation. Why? Because if we look at these skill sets, what one might have, the other might be lacking. And although these skills can be learned, there is a learning curve to it, and there needs to be a desire as well as a proper path for these administrators to learn these skill sets, which they didn't need to know. Much like in any job, when one moves into management, there are certain skills that are different than the job they had before. And if they haven't been trained how to utilize these skills, then they need to find a way to access them and to get acclimated to being proficient in these skills to be successful in the future. So the question is, at first, why do people become teachers? If you don't understand that, it's kind of hard to understand the evaluation process. And the basic thing is they want to help children. We can talk about teacher salaries and how well they're paid or how little they're paid at another time. But right now, the main point that you should know is that teachers become teachers because they want to help children. So the question is, what is the role of a teacher? Well, a teacher doesn't have just one role. The main one that we think about is that of an instructor, providing information of content area for students to learn. But they also serve as a mentor. At least good teachers serve as a mentor to help each student grow to be a better person, to be a better you. So if each student can grow to be each individual can grow to be better at who they are, then that is the goal of a teacher. Also, unfortunately, sometimes they have to play the role of social worker. What life is outside of school, or even sometimes in school, with social aspects or academic aspects, they need some support. And teachers, many times, if they have a good rapport with their students, will serve in this role. And the last one is an unfortunate one that I'm going to mention, besides many other roles, is that of police officer. And I know that police officers are not highly regarded in today's climate. However, what I'm talking about here is like a personal example I had to deal with many years ago with teaching, where a ninth grade girl came to me in tears, complaining that the boyfriend of her mother had tried to assault her. And because of this, I then needed to take the action of getting the police involved for her protection. This was a complicated thing that was involved. It ended up resulting in positive resolution. She no longer was in that environment shortly thereafter, which made it much safer for her, and that made me happy as her teacher. But it's not something that I had expected going into that teaching role, but one that I had to act on for her safety and benefit. So the next thing is that I wanted to talk about, besides the role of a teacher, is what's expected of a teacher on an administrative side. The administration sees teachers having the job of moving students along to get them proficient to move into the next grade. You want students to matriculate. They're staying at the same level. That's not so helpful. The old joke of, yes, I remember kindergarten, the best 10 years of my life. No, that doesn't quite hold water. You want students to move forward. You want them to be proficient. You want them to be successful. The only way that will work is if you're able to move students forward to the next level. But there are some challenges with that. First of all, you're dealing with, while you're teaching during that year, is the student's home life. Is there domestic problems within their home? Is there financial problems within that home? All of these can play a role in a child's preparedness for class. If they're coming to school hungry, they're not going to be of the same mental focus as someone who's had a solid breakfast going in. If a child is dealing with parents who are abusive to each other, they're not going to be coming in with the same preparedness and same emotional healthy state as a two-parent family that is loving and nurturing to a child. So these are components that will play a role for a child to be successful, and challenges a teacher must overcome regardless of whether or not the teacher knows the material or not and can teach the material or not. Then there's that, which feeds into the next challenge, having a deep knowledge of the content area. Now, you would expect this to be the case in middle and high school teachers. However, there are numerous positions that are filled by necessity of those teachers who are not necessarily qualified in the sense of highly qualified to understand the content area that well, to know the inner workings of well above and well below, to piece together the information and content and skills in a way that is student friendly, learning friendly, and gives a clear understanding as progression moves through from one grade to the next of a full understanding of the material. And this is also unfortunate in elementary schools, where many teachers are not prepared to fully understand the higher levels of that subject area, such as math, and the applications of what they're teaching in, let's say, first or second grade, and how that impacts ninth grade, 11th grade, 12th grade mathematics. And to have that understanding, or to have that understanding explained to you, makes a big difference in how a teacher is going to present the material to be conveyed to the students so they can be successful and not have to transition from one mindset to a different as the content material has now shifted and changed. Now, there's also the issue of recognizing that each child is different. They have a different way of processing things. I'm not talking of visual learner versus auditory learner and that kind of concept. I'm just taking a basic statement. If one person says something and there are 20 other people that hear it, then each of those 20 people may interpret it a very different way. Was anything different? No. But each one's coming with their own background, with their own way of understanding, their own way of interpreting things. And so then each child has this nuanced way of approaching information, of approaching learning, of approaching a specific content area. And with that, having that in mind, and to be able to work with the big variety that the classroom is dealing with for children, then it's necessary to work with this, but it's a huge challenge for teachers to be able to work across all these different learners to get them each to move forward. Now, this also has an issue of a challenge of, are the students ready at that academic level? Because if you only have half the students that passed last year in this content area, and you're trying to teach them all at one level, you're going to be very hurting. And if you have to teach at 2 different levels, it becomes more complicated. And the more levels, the more complicated it is. But beyond that, there's the issue of if they weren't prepared from last year, how can a teacher have them really prepared to move a full year that year? It becomes a great challenge. Can it be done? Yes. But is it realistic to expect the bigger the gap of how far behind they are, the longer it will take to fix, the longer it will take for students to catch up. And that's the challenge. Now, here's the issue with challenges of administrators evaluating teachers. One is the scale. What is expected of teachers in the evaluation process? Most evaluation forms in most businesses, you start at the weakest level is not meeting standards. You're not up to snuff, and that normally leads to termination. The one above that is needs improvement. This usually leads to an improvement plan. Now, the next step up is meet standards. This means you're doing okay. But I've been in schools, I've been in a school at least, where that was the highest level. That means the expectation that everything you're supposed to do is right is only meeting standards, which means you can't do great. You're only doing, yes, you just did your job. That's nice. How can one feel high morale at work when you're dealing with this? And this leads into the whole issue and challenge with it being an effective evaluator of teachers, which we'll get to very shortly. And then the next component of that should be meets and exceeds. And most evaluation forms and templates deal with meets and exceeds. It's like, yes, way to go. You did really good here. It wasn't just you met it, you nailed it. And that's something that people like to hear every now and then, even if they don't need the outside validation, to recognize that other people recognize when they've done good is something that people do appreciate. And it's that idea of being appreciated that helps build morale, which deals with teacher retention. And this is an impact which the whole idea of what's the purpose behind evaluations. It's not to say, okay, get out the bad teachers. The main idea of a purpose evaluation is to improve teaching quality without having to replace personnel. Let me say that again. To improve teaching quality without having to replace personnel. That means your ability to mentor teachers to improve. Why? Because teacher retention is key for survival of a productive and prosperous school, because it's financially debilitating with teacher turnover. It's educationally, academically debilitating with high teacher turnover. Why? Because with any job, it's believed that you need to take about 12 months to fully acclimate to that institution. Different seasonal things that are related to that specific location, and other types of internal bureaucracy, if you will, that one needs to become acclimated to and comfortable, procedural things. These are all necessary, but if you don't have that time to be able to acclimate, you're going to be behind the 8 ball, and then you can't be effective doing your job during those first 12 months if you're trying to learn the ropes of what business is all about, or how the nuances of this institution is all about. So the key is that administrator has to be able to mentor. And if they can't see what is needed, then they don't belong mentoring in the first place. And that's where the challenge is, because if an administrator can't find how to mentor, then why are they evaluating? Because otherwise you're dealing with turnover, which is financially costly. And looking at the latest turnover rates across the nation for teacher turnover, whether due to people leaving the profession or people leaving a specific school in search of another one for employment, that is a costly endeavor for all schools. and that relates to having to spend the time needed to search for new candidates to fill these positions, as well as what the emotional drain is and loss to students if you can't keep a full teaching body in place. So, with that being said, the key here is for teacher evaluations, you need to be able to have administrators that are effective in mentoring. So thank you for watching the Flexible Curricula channel once again. If you like what you see, please give us a thumbs up and share. I'd love to hear from you what you feel is an important metric in teacher evaluations. Also, if you have an idea for an upcoming video, please tell us that too in the comments below. If you want to see more of our videos, hit that subscribe button. Also, please feel free to contact me at nateb@flexiblecurricula.com if your school or district would like some guidance in growing your students towards academic excellence. Thank you once again.